Remote monitoring gives you the ability to check on the processes happening in your facility, such as the plant floor, get an instant access to information without needing to physically be there. With remote process control, you're adding the ability to take action based on what you learn through your remote monitoring. For example, an operator or a manager can check on the temperature of the warehouse while they're at home and turn the temperature up or down if necessary. Additionally, remote monitoring and control provides benefits that are not just nice to have, if you will. They're very important during the COVID-19 pandemic, as companies are striving as best they possibly can to keep their operations running, their costs low, and keep their workers safe. Remote process control helps you reduce the number of personnel who need to be on site. For instance, you can handle most issues remotely and only send someone out to the plant when it's absolutely necessary. If you're managing an operation that's, spread out over a large area, you can reduce or eliminate the need to send people out to do manual control or maintenance. And these abilities reduce operational costs, improve worker safety, enable quicker response times, reduce the need for travel, and just generally make work more convenient for everyone who's involved in it. Many experts agree that COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the need for remote operations, and that this trend is here and it's here to stay. Recently, on an Inductive Automation podcast, I had an opportunity to interview Craig Resnick, and Craig's the VP of Consulting for the ARC Advisory Group, and it's one of the leading tech research and advisory firms in the industrial sector. Craig told me on that podcast that before COVID-19, a lot of manufacturers said they'd never allow remote access of their control systems or plant floor assets because of cybersecurity concerns. But the pandemic hit, and the pandemic caused them to make the choice between not operating their plants or operating them remotely and taking some of the potential risks. Craig said, that's why a lot of companies that were resistant to remote access are now doing it. And they're working more closely with their suppliers and with cybersecurity companies to do it securely. ARC sees these practices as the new normal going forward, even after the pandemic. And inductive automation, we see that's happening as well. So panelists, I just think at least as a start here, before I actually hand it off to Kevin, let me go through each of you just to hear your perspective about this. Do you think the remote monitoring and control is becoming the new normal, as Craig may be alluding to, or what opportunities are presented by that change? So maybe I'll start with you, Kevin. Give your thoughts.
Sure. So I work with a lot of different integrators and end users, and I have seen that same type of trend in a very real way from folks who I work with on a regular basis, where maybe it started out where there was simply remote status that was needed or remote monitoring, and then it, over the last few months, it's evolved into being able to really run from a remote location without needing boots on the ground, so to speak. And then, going forward, they've put things in place now, a lot of these companies, where they can continue to operate in this way even after everything returns to whatever the new normal looks like here. So I definitely have seen a trend in that direction.
Thanks, Kevin. How about your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I mean, we've been providing services like this for probably the last 7 or 8 years, and businesses continue to grow over that time period. But we definitely have seen an uptick both in interest in the technology in general and in business for us since the pandemic has hit. And one thing I wanted to add to your slide earlier that was talking about the benefits of these types of systems. 2 things that we've really seen is one, that you can see a reduction in environmental risk with these systems if it's implemented on an environmental system, because it really gets at the fact that you're being alerted when there's an issue, and then you're able to take action on it as well. So one of the examples that I like to give is that with a pump station or a tank, having a high level in that pump station or tank isn't necessarily an issue in and of itself, but if you let that high level turn into an overflowing pump station or tank, it really does become an issue. So having the ability to control the system and either shut off the inflow or turn on the pump to pump it down can really reduce your environmental risk. And then the second thing that we really use these systems a lot for is remote troubleshooting. that, I mean, even just today, we've had guys working here. I sit in Pennsylvania. We've had some of our staff working on systems from California to Tennessee to Florida to California. And that's not atypical at all. That once we get these remote monitoring control systems set up, we really start to be able to use them to provide additional benefits, such as troubleshooting things when they go wrong.
That's actually great, David. So I went back to this slide so everyone can note, add a couple of bullet points here from what David said. Good points. Now let's go to Janne, your thoughts.
Yeah, in the building side where we are working, this kind of remote access has been constantly increasing kind of thing here in Finland, where we are working mainly. 10 years ago, when we actually made a first remote access to a heat pump, 2010, the most of the heat pump manufacturers didn't have any remote capabilities. So we actually needed to invent the first solution back then, and nowadays it's pretty much common thing here in Finland, at least, that when you buy a heat pump, you have a remote access capability there. It's also a fact that most of these remote access capabilities are provided by the manufacturer of the heat pump or some other device, and there are very many different solutions on the market, and I guess with this kind of independent platform, we can offer them one user experience to remotely access all the systems they have, and having and keeping the same user experience. And I think that's a big added value for them. It will reduce their maintenance cost and operational cost when they don't have to kind of study and learn many different user interfaces to do pretty much the same thing in different buildings.
That's great. Thank you. So I think it probably makes sense now, with that in mind, that we take time to make sure that you are all set up for remote monitoring control, and that you're doing it in the most secure way possible.